Some players were pleased with Path of Exile 2 and wanted very little to change. Others saw decent-sized tweaks, and others prayed for apocalyptic nukes and ingenuity-shattering bombs. Guess what we got? Fortunately, Grinding Gear Games pursued option 3 for Path of Exile 2 Dawn of the Hunt, the premier content update of early access. Jonathan and Mark have been vindicated with their "forget it all" warning. And the reaction has been an expected inferno from most. These meltdowns must be documented and explained, as some have good reason, such as the most important theory crafting info not being included, rip build crafters. Then, on the flip side of the coin, the needed argument for this exciting path forward with a brand new Path of Exile 2 beginning with 020 must be made swiftly and with utter confidence. If not by Grinding Gear Games, then by another. I shall step forward into the light and embrace the title bestowed upon me. Today, I'm not repping the GGG Skeptic moniker. I'm wearing the badge of GGG Shill proudly. Of course, I may be skeptical of long-term future PoE2 updates. Where the f*** is Druid Grinding Your Games? But with the absolutely cataclysmic patch notes released last night, I must advocate for the game. Or I was teetering on whether or not they'd actually go through with so many changes of such great size. I am so unbelievably thrilled they did. Jonathan and co, you're really annihilated as desired. Do not get me wrong, of course there are things I disagree with or think are missing. For example, monster speed appears to have not changed, while player power has dropped. Gem damage info is not in the notes. Lots of nerfs occur to underused skills. Why is that? There are questions, but I do have an inkling some of these were preliminary changes due to the, I don't know, over 100 new support gems, unique items, powerful crafting systems, and everything else coming in Dawn of the Hunt. Regardless, it's time to document the initial patch note crashouts. I think that's my first time ever using that term. So, why are players livid? The reasons are simple, apparent, and in many cases, I entirely understand their perspective. Firstly, planning for anything after these patch notes absolutely goes out the window, and people love planning builds and league starts in the Path of Exile 2 community. This is literally a new game with all the changes alone, and then there's also numerous brand new items and systems added to the game as well. Plus, this line right here means players cannot truly ascertain the power of skills until launch day, and they're in-game or data mined just before launch when pre-download goes out. It's ridiculously difficult to theory craft anything without all the new knowledge alongside all these changes, and that peeves many players. For those who are going to wing it, like myself, it doesn't matter much. For others, this is everything they want and need. Second, people just don't like nerfs, even if they're warranted. Third, this type of meta apocalypse is evidently pushing Path of Exile 2 into the game Grinding Gear Games advertised for many years, into a direction I was doubting they'd go in after the last few interviews. Yeah, meta builds were being torched, but plenty of other things were obliterated too, with a bunch of minor buffs to certain skills and archetypes that were lacking. For example, generally, freeze build-up speed was nerfed, yet many skills whose sole goal was to freeze enemies weren't used in 010, they were buffed in 020, like Escape Shot. This is an obvious push to the more engaging, more combo-focused gameplay Grinding Gear Games and many players like myself sought in PoE2. Fourth, and this somewhat goes with the last point, this is pushing PoE2 to be more different to Path of Exile 1. I think this is a good thing. I think every ARPG in the genre, whether it's Last Epoch, Diablo 4, Torchlight Infinite, Path of Exile 1, or Path of Exile 2, should all strive to be as unique as possible. Fifth, while this was a patch heavy with nerfs and changes to player power, monster power doesn't appear to be brought down nearly as much. Lots of bosses were tweaked, but overall monster balance doesn't appear to have been changed much. And if it's off during the campaign and/or endgame, it is definitely going to feel bad and adjustments will need to be made. If monsters still move at the same speed as before, which they likely do, with all the extra modifiers from rares and waystones on them, and player power and speed is far lower, how in the absolute hell do GGG think we'll survive and think this will be okay? Breach was toned down, as was Ritual in terms of sheer monster volume to account for this, which is a good thing for those wanting this playstyle and a bad thing for blasters, but outside those two, I feel like there might be issues present. We'll see soon enough. Sixth and lastly, lots of underutilized or not too powerful things were nerfed in this patch, confusing players. Some understood the need for meta things like ingenuity to be pulverized, as it removed the belt slot as an item slot if you could afford it or if you found it. But why did Seismic Cry's increased Warcry speed get removed and the skill get nerfed? There are two valid explanations here. First, Grinding Your Games is preemptively preparing for new interactions with new uniques, support gems, and the like. And second, well, maybe they just thought the numbers needed to be slightly tweaked or fundamental mechanics needed to change, and here and now, in early access, is the time to make these changes. And that's why I was excited for a patch like this potentially happening, because now is the time for massive change. We're in early access, take those big swings. I didn't think it was actually going to occur after those interviews that they gave with DM, Ghazi, and the like, but they did it. So what's the argument for what the heck Grinding Your Games is doing here? Well, succinctly, this seems to move the game into the direction I and many others imagined it would look like. It's a march toward more engaging combat between player characters and monsters, smoother progression to becoming an absolute god, and enabling many more options for character builds throughout the game. It's a move toward being distinctly Path of Exile 2, not Path of Exile 1.5. No, we don't want a Dark Souls, an Elden Ring, or even a No Rest for the Wicked with Path of Exile 2. We would like exactly what Grinding Your Games gave us with 010, but with more engaging combat. Encounters with monsters should be varied. There are hundreds of monster types with multiple abilities each that combo together in cool and creative ways. If you're one-shotting all of them, you never see any of these. You can still mow down foes, the smaller creatures, and get that power fantasy, but not every monster should die in less than 3 seconds, especially at the start. Sure, you should eventually be able to hit that power threshold, but not as quickly and as easily as you could in 010 with the tools available. I don't want monster pack fights to take 3 minutes, but they should not take 3 seconds. There's a better middle ground leading toward the 3 seconds, and that's where I hope this patch brings pack-to-pack fights to. Then there's boss battles, which should also not be pushovers. It sounds like this is also moving in the right direction, alongside a smoother progression once you hit endgame, which is unbelievably incredible. Players who never encountered endgame pinnacle bosses or only encountered a subset of them like myself now should take about half the time to reach them, which is awesome. They should also be balanced to account for this decreased time to reach and decreased time to build up character power. At the high end, they should still be brutally difficult and true capstone fights. This, again, builds to the goal of PoE 2, to be an engaging, next-generation ARPG, which you can eventually trivialize. Pinnacle bosses might eventually only take 18 seconds to slay, but when you duel them for the first time, it's going to be a memorable, difficult foray into danger. Finally, there's the character options piece of this patch, which is tremendous. While I see many saying the sheer difficulty of the game will push more people and more toward meta builds, I reckon with the patch there will be far more viable builds than before, or at least that's the hope. I could be wrong. There will be so many more character options opened up with the high-end options neutered, brand new options available, and many skills being fundamentally changed. Paired alongside more meaningful combat, players shall be encouraged to experiment with playstyles other than blow up screen in a few hits, and that excites me greatly. When I read the patch notes, I wasn't sour or pissed. If anything, I was elated what Grinding Your Games said was actually true. They said to expect a completely new game. They told us to forget everything we knew about Path of Exile 2 010, and they followed through on that promise. This is going to be a brand new game, and I am 100% here and along for the ride. I know there are more sides to this, but I'm gonna narrow it down to 2. Either you're excited or not excited for the patch. If you're excited, great, so am I. Or you're not excited. If you think this will be crap and the game is going to die because of it, I ask you, log in and give it a chance. If it sucks, share why with me on the forums, in our Discord, wherever. Grinding Your Games is getting a bunch of snap feedback right now based on what people are reading, and the players have no actual in-game experience with all the changes and new content. We are looking through a fogged up window, trying to make decisions about what is outside. We don't know what's outside. Grinding Your Games do, and I trust them on this right now. All the written feedback right now, I gotta say it, it's almost entirely worthless. What will be worthwhile is logging in, trying it, and truly determining if it's bad or good. If you've already dropped the $30 on early access, just give it a go. you might end up liking it. And if you don't, you'll have a far better argument for why you don't than I read the patch notes and they were all nerfs. Personally, I am going into the patch entirely fresh with very little planning. I'm going to wing my build using the tools in game and see if I can down tier 4 Arbiter of Ash by the end of Dawn of the Hunt. It's going to be a fun challenge, and I'm going to share it with this awesome community here on YouTube and Twitch. Join me if you'd like. It'll be an absolute blast, in one way or the other, because I'll be sharing all my thoughts on the game as I play live. If it's trash, I'll say so. If it rocks, I'll say so too. One thing's for sure though, I'll be having fun either way, and when I stop having fun, I'm logging out. As always, thanks so much for watching, my fellow Exile. If you liked the video, give it a like. If you'd like to see more Path of Exile 2 content, helpful commentary, and guides, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you'd like, go ahead and watch this video right now in which I have a dance party while waiting for the patch notes. It was pretty wild and worthwhile. Thanks. Stay sane, my fellow Exile.